This is Shawn Crystal. Catch the Inkpulp podcast on Pharcyde TV Wednesdays at noon Pacific time, 3 o'clock Eastern time. Come hang. Peace.
This is the Inkpulp podcast. This is the Inkpulp podcast. Comics, hip hop, life.
Welcome to the Inkpulp podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Crystal. I don't know why I say that every time. It just feels appropriate. I'm guessing most of you know who I am and you've heard this before. Should I stop? Why don't you tell me in the comments if I can stop that? Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe that's just how it is. And maybe I need a creative way of doing that. I don't know. Welcome back. If you're coming back, welcome if this is your first time. If it's your first time, you want to rewind 2 episodes because this is part 3 of how to break into comics. And you might want to start with part 1. So, today's episode is the question, do I go to art school? Do I not? What is my step after high school? So you've got, as far as I can see it, you've got 3 choices when you're done with high school. 1, try to get into the industry right away. 2, try to go to art school. Or 3, go to a liberal arts school with a decent art program. So let's talk about these. The first big question that I get asked this a lot is, should I send my kid to art school or should I go to art school? And it's not an easy thing to say yes or no to. For some people, art school is a wonderful experience and things go great and it was the right choice. For some, it was an okay experience. For some, it was a terrible experience. So, most people I know that work in comics did not go to art school, if that goes anywhere. I did go to art school for my master's degree, and I went to a liberal arts college for my undergraduate degree. So let's talk about art school first. The problem, there's 2 big problems with art school as I see it. 1, the cost, and 2, the faculty. And let's break that down. So cost. Art school is expensive as hell. It's ridiculously expensive. It is not in proportion to the money you're going to make. If it were business school, that might make more sense. The problem is this. With art school, like I think I just saw something the other day where an art school I was looking at was like $40,000 a year times 4 if you're going for 4 years. A lot of people go for 5. I mean, you're talking about $150,000, $200,000 in debt at least, and that's with no scholarships. So maybe you bring it down some. But anyways, if you're leaving school with $100,000 in debt, and then you want to get into comics specifically, I mean, art in general, like, it's a tough way to make a living, and it's a tough way to make a good living. So to have that debt hanging over you and those monthly payments needing attention puts a lot of pressure. It's like you start the game out underground rather than on ground level. And so that's my thing, is if you cannot have debt and start this pursuit into comics, you've got a leg up. You've got a big leg up. I did have that debt. I do have that debt. And it's hard. And I know a lot of my students when I taught all carry that. And it's really difficult. And a lot of them aren't working in comics, and a lot of them aren't even working in art. So that's something you got to think long and hard about. For me, and what I always say to when I was a teacher, what I would say to my students is, you're here not because of the practicality of this. You're here because your passion is driving you so strong that you are going to figure out how to make this all work at any cost to you. And if that's the case, then who am I to say no? But it's something to think about. And that's also, I built Inkpulp Instruction as a more economic means of developing yourself as an artist. Because in comics, no one's going to ask you for your GPA or your diploma. In any art field, generally, they're not going to say, you know, what was your grade point average, or let me see your diploma. All they care about is let me see your portfolio and let me see what your work looks like. And that's all that matters. So whatever you can do to develop your work is okay. So the cost is rough, really rough. And sure, some people get scholarships and there's all that, but you know, even then, coming out with that kind of debt is tough. The other problem is faculty. And this is coming from someone with experience. When I built the department, the sequential art department at SCAD Atlanta, me and my friend Pat, we put down this kind of mandate that said we should only hire professors who have experience in the industry. It doesn't make sense to not, because we both went to school under people who did not work on the industry. There's a couple that did, but most didn't work and didn't really understand the industry. And I really feel like if you haven't practiced the medium, how can you teach it? And that doesn't just go for comics. I'm talking about drawing, painting, anything. And going through all those classes I went through with teachers who didn't seem to really know what they were talking about, and spending the kind of money that I was spending was tough. So there are great faculty out there. There are great professors. And like if you go to SVA, you're going to have Klaus Janson as a professor. And when it comes to comics, I don't know that there's a better practitioner and professor in one for you to learn from. So again, if that passion is like, I'm going to get that, I'm going to go to New York City, I'm going to live there, I'm going to rack up this debt because I'm going to study under the master Klaus Janson because I know that's what I need, well, then do it. And I am not one to say anything negative about Klaus, and I know Yuko Shimizu teaches there too, and she's wonderful. So there are good faculty out there, but they're few and far between. So if you do want to go to art school, research your faculty. And if you want to go to art school for comics, there's very few people that are practiced in the medium that are teaching. So what I'm trying to do is just give you information so that you can make an informed choice. So that's my issues with art school, is faculty and money. And I don't just mean people teaching comics. I mean, I had students come in who've been through foundations where you get drawing 1, drawing 2, design 1, design 2, life drawing, all these foundation classes, and a lot of them were being taught by people who really didn't know how to teach it or even know how to practice it. So I would have to like back up where I want, like you should, like if this is where you come into art school, when you start the comics program, you should be here. So I wanted to teach from here, but I had to teach from here because they weren't getting the proper foundation. So this is all coming from my experience, and that's my opinion. Now, a liberal arts college with a good art program is a lot less risk, as I see it, because it costs a lot less money. I mean, I went to a state school in Baltimore called Towson State University, and you know, my school when I went was like, I think it was like $6,000 a year. So that's a really minor amount of money compared to art school, which is $40,000 a year. And you can find liberal arts colleges with decent art programs and decent faculty. Remember, the pressure isn't there for it to be amazing because the cost isn't that high. And you'll learn and network. What I did get from art school was networking. I met like-minded people, students like me who want to get into comics. We pushed each other. We went to comic shops. We went to cons together. And we formed this little union of hustlers that built each other up. And that wasn't the faculty. That was us. And that was the drive and the hustle in us that got us there. So there is something to be said about finding a community. And art school does offer that. But with the internet nowadays, you can find that online for free. There's all kinds of people on the internet looking to talk to other people about how to be better artists. Inkpulp Instruction is one of those places. So those are my thoughts. And then do I go right into the industry? I think if you can get out of high school and you can get a job that pays you enough to support yourself, maybe your parents will allow you to live there while you support your passion, which is what I'm doing with my kids. But everyone's different. My parents weren't like that. So if you can go wait tables 4 days a week and then spend 3 days a week developing as an artist, you're not building debt and you're saving, and that saving can be put towards taking you to conventions, getting art supplies, developing yourself, buying online art courses, all that stuff. So that's kind of the gamut of what do you do after high school. You can try to go right in, go to an art school, go to liberal arts school. And that's just a general overview of how I see it. So I hope that was helpful. If you have questions, leave them in the comments below. Other than that, we'll be back next week to talk about the different industries and the different publishers and how do you get in with a publisher. So we're getting into the meat now. So thanks again for listening. See you next week. Peace.
This is the Inkpulp Podcast. This is the Inkpulp Podcast. Comics, hip hop, life.